It's not just a story, it's a living, breathing, walking testimony of a God so good he'd leave his home in glory for the world he loved, for the world that he so loved. Hey, it's not just a story.
Hey guys, thank you for joining us for another episode of Changed. I've got something today that I want to share with you, relationship I have with one of my good friends here, Elisha. We've been going to church with each other for years. I've known him since he was probably, about like that. So I watched him grow up, and I watched him disappear for a little while. And then I watched him come back, and I watched God do a change in his life that's just powerful. And I wanted to have you here today, man, to share with the world, because a lot of folks think that when you fall, that's it. You know what I mean?
Right.
The fact that you fell, the fact that you, just disappeared for a little while, right? A couple of years off the circuit, let's just say, right?
Yeah.
You came back, and it's like it's one of those stories that you watch unfold. But God's plans for you never changed. Right. The man you are today was his plan all along.
Yeah.
Right. We just kind of go on our own little detours along the way. So
Sure.
I wanted to have Elisha here with me tonight, just to share with you his story. He is definitely one of the most influential worship artists in my life. Now, I happen to have you at my home church.
Right.
It's that's a pretty cool thing. But there are a lot of artists out there that sing, a lot of singers, a lot of artists, and they're good. But then you hear those artists that when they sing or when they play their instruments, something's just different. And that's who he is. That's who you are, man. And I appreciate you for what you've done in my life and what you do for our church as well. But I want to talk to you a little bit about what your childhood was like, what your teenage years were like. And then, and now what life is like today. So, when I first met you, I'm going to guess, I'm probably going to date myself just a little bit, but I'm going to guess that you were probably somewhere around 7 or 8 years old, maybe even a little bit younger than that.
Maybe, yeah.
But your family has always been a pillar, key family in our church. And your dad's on the worship team. Your mom's on the worship team.
Gotta follow in their footsteps.
And so what was it like growing up in a family that was so involved with our church?
I would say just growing up, you already are in that environment where, like, all right, guys, let's get ready for Sunday. Let's, make sure we're practice on these songs. We're going to sing this on Sunday. The word is going to be directed towards this. So let's sing this.
Right.
And, our house would just be filled with that environment. It would just be like worship music playing, when you're doing the dishes or whatever. Right. Them singing church songs, singing Agnes Day,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of everything that I grew up in.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. At what age did you begin to struggle with some of the things that are so typical with kids that grow up in the church? So just an example, I grew up in the church as well, and a family that was, that was a pretty big family in the church. There's a lot of us joiners out there, a whole bunch of us, right? So I know your family is similar in size and stature, right? But I know when I got around 12, 13 years old and started to grow into those teen years, the influence that I got at school and other places like that really began to kind of tug on me and draw on me. How old were you when you noticed a change and you felt a little different about the church than you did, per se, when you were just young and having fun?
Right. Because around that time, you're just like singing all the praise songs and it's fun. But I would say maybe around middle school, kind of when you have those friends who are dabbling into just whatever, let's say worldly things, just to keep it vague. And then you kind of have those outside ideals. People are kind of trying to form their own ways about going about life, even though you're like about 12 or 13.
Right.
And then maybe a little self-doubt, or just like, why do we go to church anyways?
Right.
Why does this happen?
Yeah.
So I would say, around that age, it was just a lot of new emotions and new thought processes.
Right.
Because I knew I was going to go to church and I knew I was going to be there, but the questions started forming, where it's like where are we going? I'm tired. I want to sleep in. You know, I would say it started.
Yeah.
You know.
So I can remember with me. Now I was raised in a denominational church. Things were a little different than at Christian Life, right?
Yeah.
But I can remember growing up in a very legalistic church, good people, but I think there was a lot of confusion per se.
Oh, yeah.
Let's just say that actually led me down a road that I almost didn't want anything to do with the church when I got into my teenage years. I was raised believing and thinking that God was about that big, right? And he lived in this little old box. And if I couldn't fit in that box, which nobody can, if I couldn't fit in that box, there was no way I could make it. So what happened with me personally is I began to push back, right? And I began to kind of ease my way out, right?
Yeah.
And that led me to a whole nother dark area, and kind of similar with what happened with you.
So whenever I was kind of getting maybe that pushback, I was actually even more involved in my high school and I would say early middle school and to high school years. Just like doing the worship team, being in leadership small groups, for high schoolers.
Right.
So you can teach the middle school classes or, things like that.
Right.
But it was just starting to get a little maybe overwhelming from how many obligations I had. And everybody's like, your parents are great worship leaders and you're so awesome and you lead. And I'm like, yeah,
you're right.
But then you get that self-doubt where like, I'm not good enough. I'm just a kid. Like, what is this to me? What is Christ to me? Who is he?
Yeah.
Even though I know everything about it,
right.
I'm like, still kind of what's going on.
Right. Yeah. So let me ask you this: when, there came a point in time when you felt I need to take a break from this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And which led you into, you and I have talked personally, which have kind of just led you into an area where you found yourself into a pretty dark place.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to spend too much time there because your story of transformation is so powerful.
Right. Yeah.
But tell me this, because I know there's a lot of folks out there like you and I that have experienced these highs and lows.
Yeah.
But, at what point did you find yourself, did you ever find yourself at a point where you were just like, how in the world did I get here? God, are you even there? How in the world did I get from the one who had obligations at the church 6-7 days a week to being this far away from you? And when you found yourself there, what was life like then?
I definitely feel like the one thing that was really, I would say, a game changer in that way, whenever you are a young Christian and you have a lot of obligations, I feel like the enemy is going to be trying to do everything he can to sway you.
Right.
So I felt like that is kind of what was happening. So I'm like going from a point where it's coming out of overflow to where it's starting to become a burden, where I'm like not receiving in enough. And then I'm just pouring out everything I have and realizing I'm like, okay, I need to go in the secret place. But let's say I'm only 16 at the time, or, whatever age for high schoolers. It's really easy to just get burnt out by doing your normal stuff, especially with church, like churchgoers.
So a lot of what happened with me is, and I'm kind of, I'm almost, I watched it unfold with you, right? So just being, we go to church together, right?
Yeah.
Our families are close, and we got a chance to watch it. But now when I hear your story and I put it with what I was able to see, it's like I've watched the whole thing unfold. And
Yeah.
what I found with myself and what I see more and more with you is the enemy knows that God's got huge plans for guys
Right.
like you and I.
Yeah.
He's got huge plans for us all. But he saw something inside of you that was powerful and that was dynamic, and he wanted tooth and nail to fight you, right? Because he didn't want that to come to pass, you know. And what happened with me is the further I tried to disconnect myself from the church, the more I got involved with alcohol and drugs and things like that, which led me to a whole different place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you know, I found myself there with still had this powerful relationship with my Savior,
Right.
but I was distant.
I'm doing something else.
Yeah, I'm not even there.
Yeah.
But His plans for you never changed.
Right.
And
And that's interesting that you say that, because I would say my whole time I was away from the church, I always knew I was going to go back.
right.
You know what I mean? Like, I would always think to the future and be like, okay, I know whenever I'm older and, you know, let's say I'm married with kids, I'm going to want to bring them to church,
Right.
regardless of how I'm acting in the now.
Right.
But I think that's something that gets twisted in our minds. It's like, why aren't you just going now?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And with me, again, I look at you and I see a lot of myself, right? And I see a lot of many other, you know, men that, you know, I can just relate. You know what I mean? I see you making some of the same mistakes that, you know, that I made, and watching my kids make some of the same mistakes that I make. But that's where I think it's important for my generation. You know, your dad is just a powerful man of God. You know what I mean? And to have a man like that in your life, I can only imagine that was a game changer in helping to get you where you are today.
Definitely.
You know, so do me a favor. Like I said, I don't want to spend a lot of time on the dark days.
Right. Yeah.
But I will say this, you know, when you sing, it's different than when you just hear music. Right.
Right.
It's like you know, you hear somebody sing the blues, right?
Yeah.
And you hear this person sing it, and it sounds good, but then you hear this person sing it, and they sing from a different place, right?
Yeah.
And you just go, wow, that's like they've lived that out, and it just comes out in them. What about worship? What about worship is different, and why is it that everybody around you, when you sing, they can feel that from you? There's something different, and obviously it's something that's coming from somewhere that He's brought you. There's like an intimacy or whatnot, you know, to be said there. But what do you attribute that to?
Man, that's a great question. I would probably just say, when I was younger and I was doing worship for our youth, I remember people just telling me, and I'm not trying to boast, but like, you have such an anointing for this. And it's just one of my spiritual gifts. You know, I may not be the best at, you know, figuring out other things, but when it comes to worship, I feel like I just try to give every note, every single word to Him, instead of trying to make it seem like some performance.
Right.
And that's what I usually pray into when we do worship now. I'm like, let this not be some big show, you know? Like, let this be our offering that we give to you, the whole congregation, not just the people on stage. And I mean, worship music, I feel like just for me, it's one of my favorite forms of worship to Him. Yeah. You know, because you can worship Him with everything, with your how you act at your job, how you pray, how you just speak to your fellow brothers and sisters, you know. But it's just like, we have so many Psalms in the Bible. Why not sing one?
Right.
You know, you can make your own.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
And it's just so sweet.
Yeah.
Like, when you're in a relationship and let's say you know how to play guitar and you wanna write your girlfriend a song or something, it's just so sweet to write one for your father,
right?
And to have that intimate, just thing with him, because you're not gonna just sing to
Right.
anybody. Like if I wanted to sing to Ryan behind the camera, like
Right.
that would be kind of weird. But
Right.
it's such a like a sweet thing.
Yeah. So earlier, before we started shooting, you and I were talking about this very thing.
Right.
Similar stories, right?
Yeah.
Raised in the church, fully plugged in and strong, and and then drifted away for a season. But I can remember, like you, saying, "Oh, I'll be back. I'll be back." But then I can remember getting involved because my wife and I used to sing, and I would teach at our church and different things like that. And I can remember going, "But I'll never be able to get back there." Or if I do, it's going to take so many years for me to get back.
Yeah.
But you and I were talking about, from the time that you decided, you know what, I'm not going to run anymore, and you came back, man, it's only been, would you say, 2 years?
Yeah, I would say almost even less.
Yeah.
Because I met my girlfriend about 2 years ago, and we were probably dating for maybe 4 months.
Right.
And then she convinced me to you should go to church. Like, you already want to go to church, just go.
Yeah.
And, stop being weird about it. And so maybe like a year, 8 months.
Yeah.
And now I feel like I am where I was, even better, hopefully, because, the reason that any of this happened is to be part of my story.
Right.
The fact that I fell or whatever, it made me realize that this faith is not just my parents or my family's, but it's mine.
Right.
And, Christ is my personal savior. Those are words that I've heard all my life. But instead of it just being words, it became real.
Right.
It's
funny is that I thought the same thing, that it's going to take forever. I'll never be able to get back to where I was, but you know what? God had even bigger plans for me.
Yeah.
And my times of trouble became my story. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which even opened up other doors of opportunity and ministry for me. So what, well, I've heard it said a million times, what would take us 10 years to do, God can do like that overnight, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I've watched him do with you, because I remember, do you remember the first couple of weeks that you even come back? Long before you were back up on, leading worship and on the praise team. But I just remember going up to you and talking to you and just, first of all, being glad to see you.
Yeah,
right.
Of course.
But that transition you talked about and told me that you were there a couple of weeks and then you had an experience at the church.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. That was the game changer, right?
Yeah. I was just, it was probably the fourth Sunday that I had been back, and each Sunday when worship would happen, just because that is like what really resonates with me, I'm just getting, that lump in my throat, and I'm just feeling his presence. And it's like, imagine being starved or extremely thirsty and you finally get, that taste of water.
Yeah.
And that's just been building and building over each Sunday. And I can't even remember what song was playing because I was in such a state where I'm like, what's going on?
Right.
But it must have been, I think it was maybe My King Forever.
Yeah.
And Landon was singing it. He was my old mentor, whenever I was in church, and we were on the worship team together. So it was a lot of that. And I just remember, like, in the middle of the row, there's not a ton of space in the row.
Right.
But I like dropped to my knees, and I'm bawling on the back of somebody's headrest of their chair.
Right.
And I'm like, man, it was like, of course, I felt in that moment regretful for what I had done, but I found so much freedom being able to fall into him again.
Right.
When I know that the pain that I'd held on for the 4 years that I was away from church, I was able to finally just release it and be like, I'm home.
Right. Yeah.
And that's really what happened. And after that, like so many people came up to me, maybe not even seeing what was going on, but they're like, hey, God has such a huge plan for you.
Right.
You know, I'm so happy you're here. Even people who didn't even know me
Right.
before had came up to me and they're like, man, God's got a plan for you. And then I would say after that, maybe a week after that, Sean, our worship pastor, he's like, hey man, when are we going to get you back on the worship team?
Right.
And
Yeah,
that's
he
kind
knew.
of when all that began. Yeah, because these are people, these are spiritual fathers that have been in my life, sowing into me even when I hadn't been going to church. Like I would either get a text from Landon, Sean, and then encouragement from you, Shane Piercy, just all these people who are like encouraging me to be the man that God has already made me to be.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty cool watching the whole thing unfold. You know what I mean? It has been really cool. You said something there that I want to just kind of double back to, but you had made reference to your girlfriend. And for those of you that are single, I want you to check out what he said, because the power that a girlfriend or a boyfriend can have in influence over us is powerful. And you said your girlfriend actually encouraged you to start going back to church. So I say that because if you're single, you need to find somebody that'll encourage you to get to church.
Yeah.
And not encourage you to meet them at the club.
And And I'm very fortunate because she is a worship leader at her church.
Right.
And that was something we bonded over.
Right.
And I'm like, hey, I was a worship leader at my church. And then she kind of comes with that, why aren't you now?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
But like her knowing my story and everything, and knowing how bad in my heart I wanted to go to church.
Yeah.
Just because I'm like, oh man, I want to be in touch with the Holy Spirit more, but I'm too anxious to go back to all these faces that I know that had not seen me in 4 years. It was just a lot of anxiety. Right. Just to step foot in that building again.
Right. But, so I'm going to tell you what, as we begin to wrap up here, if there are a lot of people that have similar stories to you and I, right? There's a lot of folks that have grown up in church, found themselves going, where in the heck am I?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe it's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years, 20 years, you've been out of the church, right? But you still know that one day, I know I'm going to be back there. One day I know I'm going to be back there.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do with the Changed Ministry, is to encourage people and give them hope, right? Yeah. And to let them know, one, that God's got big plans for you. You know what I mean? Yeah. And there's a lot of people that have similar backgrounds to you and I. How would you encourage them? What would you say to them? Kind of like what your girlfriend did with you. You know what I mean? But it's pretty simple, isn't it? I mean, we make more of it than it actually is, right?
I think my biggest encouragement, the one thing that was super impactful for me, was just me thinking about those people and them judging me.
Yeah.
But as soon as I walked into the building, I got nothing but smiling faces and people saying, we're so happy that you're here.
Yeah.
People who have either known me for years and years and known everything that I had been through and all the good that I did for the kingdom. Right. Or people who didn't know me at all.
Right.
And that's what's so great about Christ.
Yeah.
But
that's exactly what I thought. I can remember getting cleaned up one year. My wife and I getting the kids ready to go back to my mom's church for Easter.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm getting my suit on. I'm getting all ready. Right. And the entire time, all I can think about is, man, I'm going to see brother so and so and sister so and so, and I thought everybody would judge me, and I thought everybody would be looking at me, but I was wrong.
Yeah.
It was hilarious that when I walked in, the people that I thought were going to judge me and give me the side eye were actually the ones that made a beeline to me and gave me a big old hug and welcomed me back. You know what I mean? So the enemy's got a plan as well for us. And it's to kill, steal, and destroy, right?
Yeah.
And he a lot of time blinds us and makes us think, things that aren't necessarily so. Man, I am so proud, one, to be your friend, but so proud of the man that you have become.
Yeah,
You're
man.
doing great things. You know, a couple weeks ago, I saw a video of you leading worship at a high school that had opened up their gymnasium for some local schools in the area to have a night of worship. And there was somebody there that was taking some footage, and you were worshiping, right? But when I saw this video, you weren't performing, you were worshiping. And you were worshiping right along with all of those high schoolers. You know what I mean? And you were jumping and you were dancing and you were legitimately just in the moment. You know what I mean? And when I see stuff like that, it makes me proud, one, because I still have one that's in school, that's school age, right? That's growing up. But I love the fact, man, that these middle schoolers and these high schoolers have young adults like you that they can look up to, right? Because, you know, they look at you, you know, you can tell you've been hitting the weights a little bit, right? you can, you know, you're talented musically, right? But the kids look at you. The young, you know, the teenagers look at you. Other young adults look at you. Heck, I look at you. And I'm like, I want to be like him. You know what I mean? And I appreciate that. And that's why I had you here today. And I'm so proud of this guy. So proud of him. He's been an absolute gift to the kingdom. So we want to thank you for joining us for Changed Ministry. I know tonight our conversation is going to be a blessing to you. If you know somebody that needs to hear this, share this video with them. And don't forget to click that like button and that subscribe button on your YouTube channel and share this video. We're going to bring more videos your way, but the whole point of the Changed Ministry is to encourage people and to give them hope. And if this brother didn't encourage you and didn't give you hope, I don't know who will. So, man, I appreciate you. I love you. I'm proud of you. And we'll see you again soon.
I've been changed.